Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Well, again, John, there has been no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russians or Trump and Russians. No collusion. Bottom line, they all say there's no collusion. And there is no collusion. I can only say this, there was absolutely no collusion, but it has been determined that there is no collusion. When they have no collusion, and nobody's found any collusion at any level.
Yeah, okay.
According to sources who talked to Caitlin Polwens or a court writer, Mueller told Gates that he had plenty of evidence against Paul Manafort. Of course, Paul Manafort was the former campaign chairman of the Trump campaign, and as well as Gates's former business partner. And he said he had plenty of evidence against Manafort. What he needed Gates' help with was the core mission of the special counsel, which is the ties between Trump campaign and alleged ties between the Trump campaign and Russians. And Wolf, what this means is that the special counsel is looking specifically at making the case of Russian collusion, that it has not gone away despite what you hear from President Trump and from his allies.
Don't you love starting off a Friday like that? Love that. Love that. So Mueller is looking at collusion, which is it's just a word. What he's really looking at is conspiracy. He's looking at foreign interference in an American election with the help of the Republican nominee and eventual winner of the presidency of the United States, one Donald Trump, and his campaign. What that report clearly shows is that Manafort is toast. See, Manafort is accused of financial crimes. Financial crimes are provable on paper, on pieces of paper, like bank statements and Cyprus banks and moving around monies and things like that. And you don't really need Rick Gates, Paul Manafort's partner in crime, to testify against Manafort, because Manafort's entire all of his activities would be somewhere on wire transfers, on paper, right? And so all you would need is somebody who prepared those documents to testify to their validity. You don't need Rick Gates to turn state's evidence against Manafort. And in fact, what we found out yesterday or late last night was that Gates did not get a deal. You know, Gates pled guilty. Gates and Manafort. You ever read the indictment against Manafort? You ever read that? In case you haven't, every time they mention Manafort, it's Manafort and Gates. It's like, it's like a company almost, It's Manafort and Gates, Manafort and Gates, Manafort and Gates. I mean, they're almost like one person, almost inseparable in the indictment of Paul Manafort. But what we learned yesterday was they don't need Gates to give them, Mueller's team, to give them any more evidence against Manafort, because they already have enough to make Manafort not just toast, but burnt toast. And so what they need Gates for is Trump's eggs. Because what goes better with toast than eggs? They want Trump's eggs on a platter, and they believe Gates can give that to them. They believe that Gates is going to be the one to crack open the collusion, the cooperation that was, accepted by the Trump campaign from the Russians by drawing very clear lines between Gates, Manafort, the campaign manager, Michael Flynn, the eventual national security advisor. Lock her up, Michael Flynn. Yeah, lock him up. And Russia. That's that. So Mueller is sniffing around for collusion, even as Donald Trump says there is no collusion, because the House of Representatives has taken the fifth. Okay, they won't even examine any of the witnesses that came before them. If the witnesses that came before them said, "Ask me a question," no, I'll tell you what question to ask me. Oh, and the answer is no. They went, "Thank you, have a nice day." See, but the Senate isn't exactly rolling over, although I do have my suspicions about what Charles Grassley is doing over on the Senate Judiciary Committee, because Grassley's staffers are the conspiracy theorists of the universe. I mean, there's very long articles out there this week about Grassley's staff and how every conspiracy theory that you ever saw was pretty much concocted in Grassley's office by his legislative investigative counsel. Oh my God. So anyway, I digress. But it looks like Gates got the plea deal from Mueller, not because he was cooperating on the indictments of Manafort, but he got the plea deal because he's cooperating on the central issue of Mueller's investigation with regard to Russian interference and whether or not the Trump campaign was receiving stolen information, accepting dirt on Hillary Clinton by ill-gotten gains, whether there was quid pro quos, blackmail, etc., etc. And that's what he needs Gates for. So that's why Gates got a plea deal. He didn't get a plea deal because he was helping him with the Manafort case, obviously. So now we have other news that Mueller's looking at Jeff Sessions. And the meeting that he had with Kislyak and the NRA, who this week admitted that they take foreign money, but they swear to God, pinky swear, I guess, that they don't commingle their foreign funds that they receive with election funds, and yet there's very little disclosure required of them, so you don't really know. So Mueller is looking at the GOP convention in Cleveland. He's looking at remember the first inkling we got that something was awry was when, because, we got the intelligence community signing off on, Russia interfered. Then we found out that the GOP, the convention in Cleveland, that they changed the platform. And Mueller is talking to some of the people who were around when the platform got changed. This is so interesting because, you had people who were drawing up the Republican platform. And after the convention, there was there was complaints from some of the more hawkish Republicans that saw the platform get softened, and so you had somebody that said that's been talking to Mueller that said that Diana Denman. She, never heard her name before, but apparently she's a member of the Platform Committee's National Security Subcommittee. And her proposed language said that the United States would supply, quote, lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine's armed forces and greater coordination with NATO on defense planning. But the final version, the final language of the GOP platform took out the reference to lethal defensive weapons. And after the convention, Denman told Reuters way back in 2016, and J.D. Gordon, who was a prominent foreign policy advisor to Donald Trump's campaign, said, I'm going to speak to Trump about the language on Ukraine because that makes no sense to us. How did that happen? And that J.D. Gordon said, the Trump campaign was responsible. They had a direct role in changing that language and softening that language. And that's bad. That's bad. We're going to talk to Donald Trump because certainly he didn't mean that. He didn't mean to do that. That had to be a mistake that was made by the Trump campaign. And of course it wasn't. And Trump continues to kiss Vlad's ass, calling him up and congratulating him on his sham election. And now today, Russia has just launched something that they're calling the Satan II missile. It's actually called the Sarmat, but NATO allies of ours have dubbed it the Satan II missile because it's an ICBM, a liquid-fueled ICBM capable of carrying multiple independently targeted thermonuclear warheads and has been said to be capable of evading state-of-the-art defense systems and can destroy landmass the size of Tejas. For those of you who are curious about how the wedding went in Texas, about how when we married off Karen and Steve's, first son, I posted it on Instagram. Scotty just, showed me how to actually post on Instagram. So I will be posting more photos because it's so fun. So if you want to see my beautiful dress, you want to see the Howard, you want to see the wedding, you want to see the chuppah, you want to see Karen crying and Steve crying as they marry, it's all there on the Instagram. Anyway, I digress. So how's that thing going with Russia, Trump? How's being nice and getting along with Russia going for you? Because already yesterday we got a hit list. Richard Engel's going to have a special on MSNBC tonight at 9 o'clock. Richard Engel is the guy who broke this story last night. And he discovered that there are double agents who are in England, like Mr. Skripal and his poor daughter, Yulia, who is apparently recovering from the Novichok attack. She's starting to speak to doctors and stuff. And so that's good. But, Mr. Skripal himself, he's a double agent, right? He defected from Russia, went to London and became a source for English intelligence. And there are former Russian double agents that got terrifying messages, and they didn't take them seriously until after Skripal was poisoned. But the message that Boris Karpichov said that he got was, quote, "Be careful, look around, something is probably going to happen," and that there was a hit list of, mostly British intelligence agents who were former Russian nationals or former Russian spies who had defected. And so Chris Steele is on that list. Chris Steele, the author of the dossier, he's on that list. You know who else is on that list? Our friend Bill Browder. Bill Browder is on a hit list along with other KGB agents. And so I just and now you've got Russia launching the Satan II thermonuclear independent. It's a ballistic missile that can launch thermonuclear warheads, multiple thermonuclear warheads. Each one of them would be separately targetable from one missile. Okay, they could just split off, and one could go to Texas, and one could go to Florida. How's that working out for you, Donald Trump? Getting along with Russia, getting along. They were so stupid. All the other people, stupid. And I'm going to get along with that. How's that working out for you? And apparently, our State Department was never notified they were doing a test or whatever. Nobody's ever being told anything anymore. NATO is freaked out by this. And our president is being investigated as being a Russian agent. We got the Manchurian candidate in the White House. And Russia feels completely emboldened by this. Also, after Skripal was poisoned and Theresa May went to all the NATO allies and said, could you please throw out all these Russian spies from your countries? So Donald Trump handpicked 60 that he would throw out, which is what? It's like 15% of the Russian spies we have in the United States. So he could look like he was doing something. I mean, it's just, and then as soon as he did that, Russia kicked out 60 of ours. And then launched this awesome liquid-fueled ICBM capable of carrying multiple thermonuclear individually targetable warheads. Each one could destroy Texas, a landmass the size of Texas. You know what? This man is so dangerous. Hurry up, Mueller! Oh, my God.
At RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
You've got a timeline over months where you know everything that's happened. And you tell the president, what were the conversations in the campaign about meetings with the Russian ambassador? And the president says, I never heard anything about that. The investigators, by the time they walk into that meeting, they already know what the answer is. This is complicated, it's methodical, and the president ought to be cautious if he ever goes into a conversation. Don't ever mess with Director Mueller. He'll crush you.
The other thing Mueller has are the business records and tax returns of Donald Trump for a good number of years.
You think he has the tax returns, Carl?
There is no question in my mind whatsoever. Am I 100%? I'd say 99.9% sure, and that's been suggested to me by people who should know, not in Mueller's office, But others, you got to remember, this investigation has been going on for a good while. I don't think there's any question about it. I think that all the business transactions, as Donald Trump Jr. once said, you know, most of our money, I don't want to misquote him, I'm going to paraphrase him, about how much of our money in the Trump family and Trump organization has come from Russians, ethno-Russians from Russia. This has been the source of the financing of the, quote, Trump empire, as it were, for years and years. And where all this is leading is this question of whether or not there was influence over people in the campaign or in in Trump's family or business organization by the Russians. And Mueller is methodically going through, and we are seeing signs of interaction between Russians, ethno-Russians, people close to Trump, high in his campaign organization. And we've known for a while that the person named who worked for both Manafort and for Rick Gates was a Russian operative. We've known that for a good while. This has been pointing in this direction for a long time, and now we're going to see how the Republicans react, and will they continue to defend Trump blindly and saying, oh, there's no evidence of collusion here.
You've got Russia.
Yes, you now have Russia. It's unbelievable, but here's the story about how we got here. A filing was made in, remember this Dutch attorney who worked for Skadnarps? You know, we told you about him. His name was Alex van der Zwaan. And everybody was sitting there, including me, scratching my head in various body parts going, what the hell is this about? Well, it turns out that there was a 30-page memorandum that was filed on Tuesday night. It included, the indictment of van der Zwaan and the things that he was being accused of doing and the evidence that they had against van der Zwaan. So I'm just going to read you this article because I think this is the best way for you to understand what the Dutch attorney's prosecution revealed and why they went after this prosecutor. I'll just give you a little taste of what it's going to say at the end because I think this is really, really, it piqued my interest, but it was at the end of the article. So I'll tell it to you first so you'll listen real carefully, right? Turns out that Alex van der Zwaan's father is, the Alpha Bank chairman. And you remember Alpha Bank had a server in Donald Trump's orifice in Trump Tower? And everybody was wondering, why does he have a Russian bank's server in it? And they said, oh, it was for ads. What was he advertising in Russia? What was he advertising in Russia? I don't understand. All right, but that's who Alex van der Zwaan's dad is. So, okay, it goes like this. This is the CNN reporting, okay? The special counsel investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election revealed Tuesday night that prosecutors say they have connected former Trump deputy campaign chairman Rick Gates to a person with Russian intelligence, with ties to Russian intelligence services while Gates was working on the Trump campaign. Whoops. Now, remember, I'm going to just fill this in as we go along. Trump keeps saying no collusion, no collusion. Okay, who cares what he says? Anything he says is meaningless. He gave a speech in Ohio last night that was so full of lies that you had to, sit there and go through it. I mean, sentence by sentence, because not one sentence was true. It was just unbelievably false. Everything he said was false. But that said, Trump keeps saying that whatever Manafort and Gates did was financial crimes that happened way before they joined the campaign. Yeah, no. This has to do with the time Manafort and Gates spent on the Trump campaign. And remember, when Manafort left, Gates stayed on. Okay, so let me continue. That Gates and the unnamed person who had lived in Kiev and Moscow, worked for one of Paul Manafort's companies, were in touch in September and October 2016, was, quote, pertinent to the investigation, according to the court filing from prosecutors Tuesday night. The acknowledgement that Gates knew the person had Russian intelligence ties is alleged in a report prosecutors filed about the coming sentencing of a Dutch attorney. That attorney, Alex van der Zwaan, who worked with Gates and Manafort, pleaded guilty last month to lying to special counsel Robert Mueller's investigators about his interactions with Gates and the unnamed person. Okay, we now know who the person is, okay? It won't mean anything to you. It doesn't really mean that much to me, but there is a named person. His name is Killick. And he was the contact for Oleg Deripaska, to whom Paul Manafort owed millions of dollars, according to Oleg Deripaska's lawsuit filed in the Cayman Islands against Manafort. Okay. Anyway, in an opposing 30-page memorandum also filed Tuesday evening, Van der Zwaan begged for leniency and asked the judge to avoid sending him to jail next week. Instead, Van der Zwaan asks to pay an appropriate fine, according to the filing. He will be the first defendant in Mueller's probe to face sentencing on April 3rd. Here's what his Dutch lawyer says about him, poor guy. His world has collapsed as a result of his decision to lie to law enforcement. Van der Zwaan's career as a lawyer may be over, and he risks missing the birth of his first child in London. Although he has had occasional visitors and took a car trip with his wife over the Christmas holidays, his existence has largely been solitary. He lives alone in a hotel in a city where he has no close friends. His days are empty and lonely. Van der Zwaan's charge carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. Though he qualifies for a recommended sentence of 0 to 6 months, he also faces a fine of up to $250,000. The prosecutors, in their own memo to federal judge Amy Berman Jackson Tuesday night, do not ask for any particular sentence, but note how Van der Zwaan was an experienced lawyer and lied to them after Manafort and Gates were indicted. Van der Zwaan's memo Tuesday describes the work he did at the law firm Skadden Arps, which eventually led to his guilty plea. Here's what happened. After years of working with Gates on a report meant to aid a political group in Ukraine, Gates contacted him in 2016 about a foreign criminal case they feared could be filed against Van der Zwaan's law firm. Afraid of the situation, the young attorney recorded a phone call with Gates. Whoops. And the unnamed Eastern European associate, which is this Killiman guy who's the direct tie to Oleg Deripaska, and a call with his firm. And later, when Mueller's office asked about his interactions with Gates and the other person, he lied because he feared his firm might fire him for recording the call, according to the memo. Quote, Alex was keenly aware that he was not speaking only to Mueller's office. In his mind, his boss was listening to every word. He was afraid of being fired. The firm ultimately fired him. Before his charges, Van der Zwaan confessed to both Mueller's office and Skadden Arps and turned over the notes, recordings, cell phones, and laptops he had. In late 2017, he gave 2 hours-long voluntary interviews to Mueller's investigators and answered questions about the recorded conversations and several other subjects, the court memo said. And then in February, he pleaded guilty. Quote, this widely publicized prosecution, as well as its collateral consequences, sends a strong message to anyone who considers lying to federal investigators, the sentencing memorandum from Van der Zwaan says. Van der Zwaan admitted to one charge of lying to investigators about his interaction with Gates. He said he also lied to investigators about his failure to turn over the email communications, including emails where he considered working for the men who later became Trump campaign leaders, to the special counsel's office and to his law firm as it cooperated with Mueller on its investigation into Manafort and Gates' foreign lobbying. Van der Zwaan's criminal charge has no apparent connection to the Trump campaign aside from his contact with then campaign aide Gates in 2016. However, the legal hot water he faces highlights how Mueller's prosecutors have used laws against lying to federal investigators as a way to gain cooperators and gather information during their probe. van der Zwaan has not been allowed to travel outside of Washington and Manhattan. How horrible. As he awaits sentencing, his wife, Eva Khan, lives in London and is due to give birth in August. Eva Khan, as well as his mother, his father, and a former colleague from Skadden Arps who chose van der Zwaan as his son's godfather, wrote letters to the judge about the burden van der Zwaan now bears. He's a dirty lobbyist. Oh, my God. His wife recounts how she burst into tears at the 12-week ultrasound of her unborn baby. The ultrasound specialist asked me if my husband came with me for the revealing of the gender of the baby. People constantly ask me, where is Alex? I feel their judgment. As for his personal situation, the prosecutors counter that van der Zwaan, quote, is a person to whom every advantage in life has been given and from whom the government and the professional bar rightly expected candor and uprightness. Still, they acknowledge that the judge could sentence him in a way that could allow him to return to London for the birth of his child. It's his father-in-law, sorry. Van der Zwaan's father-in-law, the Russian billionaire. Seriously, dude, every rock you turn over, there's a Russian connection. Van der Zwaan's father-in-law, the Russian billionaire German Khan, who co-founded Alpha Group, a large financial conglomerate, was recently named in the Treasury Department's list of Russian oligarchs. Last year, CNN reported that the FBI examined whether there was a computer server during the 2016 presidential campaign between Alpha Bank and the Trump Organization, though there's no indication that van der Zwaan is connected to that matter. Dude. At the time, Alpha Bank said in a statement that U.S.-based hackers had launched cyber attacks, and they were trying to frame the bank to manufacture the illusion of a contact between Alpha Bank and the Trump Organization. Oh, please. Unlike 4 other defendants in the Mueller probe who have pleaded guilty to criminal charges, van der Zwaan did not enter into an ongoing cooperation agreement with the special counsel's office. So that's where this Dutch attorney fits in. I mean, this is crazy. He was in contact with Gates the whole time. Gates is emailing him. And his father-in-law is the founder of the Russian bank Alpha Bank, who has a server in Trump Town. Oh, this is just unbelievable. This is just every person from juniors having meetings. Eric's on the TV. Oh, a disproportionate, number of our assets come from the Russians in 2008. Junior says, and Eric says the same thing. And then you got Eric meeting with the Russians, and you got, Gates talking to Russian intelligence operators through van der Zwaan, who's hooking them all. This is crazy. And now Russia is launching freaking missiles, and they have a hit list where Bill Browder is on the hit list, and Chris Steele is on the hit list, and Skripal was on the hit list, and Skripal and his daughter have been poisoned. I mean, how is this working out for us? This lovely friendship that our president has struck with his with little teeny tiny Vlad. You know, Vlad's a very small guy. He's small. He's just itty bitty. He's a little Napoleon guy. Yeah, you could. He is pocket sized. You could carry him around in your pocket. Pocket Putin. And Trump is his poodle. Trump is his dog. What the hell kind of thing what kind of blackmail does he have? It's unbelievable. And listen, some of these contacts may have been okay, except that they lied about them, which means they're not okay. Sessions lied about it to the Senate, meaning it's not okay that he had meetings with Kislyak privately in his office. That Alexander Torshin shows up at the NRA. And now the NRA is admitting, yeah, we take foreign funds, but we didn't use any of it for election. That you've got Kremlin-connected emails. That Rick Dearborn, you know who Rick Dearborn is? Rick Dearborn is another one. The Senate Judiciary Committee. This is the Grassley-Feinstein letter that went out yesterday. The Senate Judiciary Committee wrote a letter to the lawyer for Rick Dearborn. Rick Dearborn was the policy director on the Trump campaign. And Rick Dearborn was the one who set up the first foreign policy shop in Virginia, at the behest of Jeff Sessions, right? Now, why would Dearborn and Sessions be working together like that? Because Dearborn was Jeff Sessions' chief of staff. And remember, Sessions was the earliest supporter of Donald Trump, and he came on board, blah, 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 at the very beginning, and he was the only senator, and he threw in with him. And so Rick Dearborn came with the package. Now the Senate Judiciary Committee are expanding their probe by writing to Rick Dearborn's lawyer, Ben Ginsberg, and writing to another guy, Mashburn's lawyer. These guys, one did the foreign policy, the other one did, the policy shop, saying to them that, we need information on Jeff Sessions and what was his contact with Kislyak and because we know he lied to the Senate. We're going to... Listen, if today ends without the resignation or the firing of Jeff Sessions, then it will happen next week. Also, we're on Kelly watch. Looks like Kelly is being because Kelly gave Shulkin a heads up.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
From a counterintelligence perspective, there's a lot of stuff that smells very bad about this. The Kilimnik thing is certainly one of those bad-smelling things. Actually, if you go back a little further, when Paul Manafort was working for the then president of Ukraine, Mr. Yanukovych, it's incomprehensible to me that Yanukovych, who was very, very close to Putin and Moscow, would have not at least been vetted and perhaps had other contacts with Russia via Ukraine at that time, via Yanukovych. The Kilimnik thing, he appears to be, to me, he looks like, smells like a GRU officer, Russian military intelligence officer. And if people in the campaign knew about that, then that's a various thing. But by far and away, for me, the most... the thing that screams out at me most is something that we're not talking about right now, which is when Paul Manafort reaches out through an intermediary to an oligarch by the name of Oleg Deripaska, very close to Putin, and says, hey, if you need an inside private briefing about how things are going in the campaign, and this is when Manafort was, I believe, the campaign manager, Manafort said, I'm happy to provide that, essentially providing an insight directly to Vladimir Putin as to how the Trump campaign was going. So there are a lot of different things going on here that from a counterintelligence perspective just raise my antenna.
You've got Russia.
Yeah. So this is where we're at now. Every person, it's almost to a man. You lift the rock and there's an email from the Kremlin to the Kremlin, about the Kremlin, asking how it's going. I'll give you private briefings. Manafort is telling Oleg Deripaska, I'll give you private briefings on how things are going. And Kilimnik, this guy who was talking to Rick Gates, who's Manafort's partner, is also a conduit to Oleg Deripaska, who was suing and is suing Paul Manafort for millions of dollars. Why? Because Oleg Deripaska contracted with Paul Manafort around 2005 because Manafort allegedly had a way for the Russians to infiltrate American politics at the highest level. And part of that plan was to run a friendly person who apparently was blackmailable by Putin himself. And when Donald Trump started, receiving all this Russian money, as we know Donald Trump Jr. told us they were in 2008, a very disproportionate number of our assets are coming from Russia. It seems like this is when they started to cultivate the whole Trump clan into maybe considering, working with Putin to forward this Paul Manafort plan that Oleg Deripaska paid millions of dollars for to infiltrate American politics at the highest levels. By 2013, Trump does go to Russia. He brings the Miss Universe pageant. He brags that he loves, Vladimir Putin. He brags that Putin sent him a gift. He brags that he met Putin. He brags that he met all the important oligarchs. He tells everybody that, him and Putin are, copacetic, that they're great friends. He admires him. Beginning in 2013, and we know that Make America Great Again was trademarked in 2012. Now he brings in Everyone he brings in has a Russia connection. Every last one, from Jeff Sessions to Rick Dearborn to this Mashburn guy to Manafort to Gates to Roger Stone, Carter Page, George Papadopoulos. You know what's interesting is Dearborn is the recipient of an email that was titled Kremlin Connection, telling him that Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to meet with Donald Trump before the election and would try to make contact at the upcoming NRA convention. How is this possible? Every single last individual has a connection to Russia at the highest levels of Russian government. And now Vladimir is playing off this selection of Donald Trump, by threatening us with independently targeted thermonuclear warheads on a liquid-fueled ICBM. And creating hit lists and following through on those hit lists. Actually being able to check off the names of people on that hit list as being hit. Oh my God, this is just incredible. I mean, this president has done something that is so evil and so unholy and so un-American and so dangerous and so, important to the future of this country. And Russia did it simply by having somebody who was easily blackmailable. I don't know what the blackmail is. It could be financing. It could be PP tape. It could be, I don't know. I don't know what the hell it is. I'm dying to know what the blackmail is so that we can get it out in the open and he's not blackmailable anymore. He's incapable of feeling shame. So if he had any nads, if he had eggs, if he had huevos, if he had anything of any import, if he was half the man he says he is, he would just challenge Putin to, what, I've had it with you. Go ahead, blackmail me. Go ahead. Get it out there. But he's apparently afraid of two things and two things only, and that's Vladimir Putin and Stormy Daniels. And I have no earthly idea what they can prove about this man, but apparently they can prove something pretty horrible, because the evangelicals don't give a rat's ass that this man is a horrible person, a vulgar person, a dishonest person, who also, cheats on his, postpartum wife repeatedly. At the same time, he's cheating on his wife with, one girl. He's cheating on the other girl with another girl, and then another girl, and then he's, sexually harassing on top of that. They don't care. He's sufficiently racist enough. He's our guy. I mean, it just, I really, and Fox News, let me tell you something. These people, they are standing behind this anti-American. I hope this is the demise of Fox. I'll tell you this. Like Laura Ingraham, I'm sure you've heard that she decided to attack David Hogg from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas because they're asking for 5 things that most Americans are for with regard to background checks and banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and, studying gun violence in America, and because they're asking for these things that most Americans are for, but Laura Ingraham is a wholly owned subsidiary of the NRA. She decided to go personally trash David Hogg's grades. This kid has a 4.2 grade point average, and she decided to go after his applications to certain colleges that turned him down with a 4.2 grade point average, and trash him personally. And so David Hogg went on Twitter and said, anybody know who Laura Ingram's advertisers are? And a list popped up, almost immediately, because everybody knows, especially people that work at Fox, that suffer through that show, having to produce it or having to write it or having to film it or having to, put makeup on her. Yeah, people know. And all of a sudden, a list of her advertisers shows up and David Hogg starts calling them. And guess what? 9 of them, big ones, huge ones, have pulled off of her show the same way they destroyed Bill O'Reilly with an advertiser boycott. And hopefully Sean Hannity will go down too. This whole channel has to be destroyed. It is just absolutely dangerous. the crap that they allow to pass as truth or news on top of it is so dangerous, and it's so Russian, and it's so it's to make people hate our own system of government so that they beg for an oligarch. They beg for an authoritarian. They beg for a demagogue. They beg for I alone can fix it. They beg for an authoritarian unitary executive. And this is what we have. You know, he may not even replace half of the cabinet he fired. He's going to do it alone. He's going to go it alone. He may not replace Hopi Hicks. Dopey Hicks. He may not replace her. He may not. This is why another reason why I'm watching John Kelly, because there's talk about he doesn't need a chief of staff. He doesn't need a communications director. He doesn't need anybody to, run the way. Only he alone can do it. And everything he touches is turning into complete and utter danger. Not chaos anymore. Dangerous. Dangerous. The Satan II missile? Really? This is unfreaking believable. And now, David Hogg, of course, reacted to Laura Ingraham star. Oh, I'm so sorry. And in the spirit of Holy Week, I'm going to apologize to you, David Hogg. And David Hogg was like, really? It wasn't until we got your advertisers to pull money away from your show. This is a little late.
Ingram's original tweet said, David Hogg rejected by 4 colleges to which he applied and whines about it. Dinged by UCLA with a 4.0 GPA, totally predictable given acceptance rates. Hogg then called on advertisers to boycott Ingram, and several companies have cut their ties, pulling their ads from Ingram's show. David Hogg joins us now live. David, great to see you as always.
Nice to see you too.
So listen, at our latest count, there's been 7 advertisers that have pulled out of Laura Ingram's show after one tweet from you. I mean, it seems like you have a lot of power at the moment, and I'm just wondering how you feel about all of this.
I think it's great that corporate America is standing with me and the rest of my friends, because when you come against any one of us, whether it be me or anybody else, you're coming against all of us. And I think it's important that we stand together as both corporate and civic America to take action against these people and show them that they cannot push us around, especially when all we're trying to do here is save lives. And when people try to distract, like Laura's trying to do right now, from what the real issue here is, which is gun violence in America, it's not only sad, it's just wrong. From a journalistic standpoint, I would say that she needs to be more objective and needs to stand down, because I am not the issue here. The issue needs to be gun violence in America, but what she's trying to do is to distract from that, and I hate it.
I hate it too. I think it's nasty, and all the conspiracies about these kids already. They had Emma Gonzalez. She was tearing up a shooting range target, and they photoshopped it so it looked like she was tearing up the Constitution. That's vile. They're going after David Hogg repeatedly. They've called him everything from a crisis actor. Alex Jones put David Hogg on his screen and overdubbed Hitler and said all youth movements are, Nazi, and this is no different. This is a youth movement that reeks of Nazi Germany. I mean, the things that channel does, everything from Tiller the Baby Killer, which actually resulted in Dr. Tiller being shot dead in his church on a Sunday, Elliot. To the Pizzagate thing that caused a guy to drive from North Carolina to Washington D.C. to shoot up the Comet Pizza place and ping pong parlor. I mean, everything that they do incites violence, and nobody seems to want to hold them accountable. And it's ridiculous, because now they're going after survivors of a mass shooting.
And we will change the world.
That image led Hogg's critics on the right to falsely suggest it was a Nazi salute. InfoWars actually edited in Hitler's voice over Hogg. But Hogg wasn't the only student targeted by conspiracy theorists.
In a little over 6 minutes, 17 of our friends were taken from us.
Parkland survivor Emma Gonzalez took heat from the right about the Cuban flag patch sewn onto her jacket at the March for Our Lives. It represented her Cuban heritage. Congressman Steve King, a Republican from Iowa, posting on Facebook, Your ancestors fled the island when the dictatorship turned Cuba into a prison camp after removing all weapons from its citizens, hence their right to self-defense. Gonzalez was also accused of ripping apart the Constitution. Turns out the fake image was made from a picture of her in Teen Vogue, in which she ripped up a paper for target practice. It was promoted on Gab, the alt-right alternative to Twitter. And the hits keep coming. The conservative blog Red State questioned openly whether or not David Hogg had even been at school the day of the shooting, even though this video of him hiding inside a closet at the time of the shooting had been widely available. Later, the writer admitted her story was incorrect. And an aide to a Republican Florida legislator suggested Hogg and others weren't actually students, but crisis actors.
I'm not a crisis actor. I'm somebody that had to witness this and live through this.
You know, it hasn't even been a week since the March for Our Lives, and already you can see what conservative media has done. Not even a week. Tomorrow will be a week since the March for Our Lives. Laura Ingraham needs to shut up and dribble, and that yes, I said it. She needs to shut up and dribble. Remember when she because, you know, Colin Kaepernick is so wrong about, kneeling to demand equal justice under law. We have another unarmed black man this week shot dead, or actually last week shot dead, in Sacramento. And today the autopsy report came out. Stephon Clark shot 8 times in the back, meaning he was not charging the police. He was running away or on the ground.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Prepare yourself.
And essentially, at the second autopsy, there were a total of 8 gunshot wounds. A total of 8 gunshot wounds, meaning that he was hit by 8 bullets. He was shot in the back 6 times.
Okay.
The 7th gunshot wound was slightly to the side of his body, but to the back of the side of his body. So you could reasonably conclude that he received 7 gunshot wounds from his back. And each one of these bullets independently possessed a fatal capacity, meaning that out of all the 7, all he needed to have died was just one of the 7.
That is the that is the official autopsy it's Dr. Omalu who delivered the bad news that Stephon Clark was shot in the back 6 times and then in the side to the back another time. Each independent gunshot would have killed him. He didn't die instantly. That's another lovely detail of this wrongful death. So what we can conclude now is that the police lied and that Stephon Clark was not charging them with a cell phone or anything like that, that he was probably exactly the way that we saw that video. When we saw that video, we concluded ourselves, and it's just me watching it. It wasn't. I'm not an expert witness. I'm not I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not any. I do have an honorary law degree, but I'm not an expert witness in any way, shape, or form. But what my eyes told me was that the police were lying when they said that Stephon Clark was charging at them. And it looked to me like Stephon Clark had hit the deck as soon as he heard a gunshot being fired, that he went to the ground and laid down, and these gunshots were then in his back, which is what was facing up because his chest was against the ground. And this is just one of the police murders in this country. And yes, Stefan Clark made a mistake. Apparently, Stefan Clark had broken car windows and was jumping fences. So can we now talk about the mistakes the police made? Please. Can we now discuss those mistakes? Here are the statistics. Police officers killed 1,129 people in 2017. More people died from police violence in 2017 than the total number of soldiers killed in action around the globe. More people died from police violence in 2017 than the total number of U.S. soldiers killed in action around the globe. That number, for those who are curious and need all the numbers, is 21. That's how many U.S. soldiers were killed in action around the globe. More people died at the hands of police in 2017 than the number of black people who were lynched in the worst year of the Jim Crow laws. That was 161 black people lynched in 1892. Cops killed more Americans in 2017 than terrorists did. They killed more citizens than airplane deaths worldwide. That was 13. They killed more people than mass shooters, which is quite a competition in this country. Mass shooters took 428 lives. And Chicago's top gang thugs took 675 lives. Of those 1,129 police killings in 2017, only 12 officers were charged with a crime related to a shooting death. Only 12. There is a extensive study. It's posted on The Root, for those of you who read The Root. For those of you who don't, add it to your bookmarks. They took the numbers from a very extensive study called Mapping Police Violence, and it details the data for police violence. It tracks police shooting numbers and the statistics, and it maps the incidents, and it compiles the data in real time. And the sources that Mapping Police Violence relies on is a number of sources: Fatal Encounters, U.S. Police Shootings Database. And remember, those are only the ones that are reported, killed by police. And it breaks down the shootings by race, by location, by weapons used, and whether or not the victim was armed. Now, we all know that Philando Castile couldn't have been murdered because white police officers don't murder black men, especially when black men have carry permits, concealed carry permits like Philando Castile. That would never happen, right? It did happen. Yeah. But aside from the fact that only 1% of the officers whoever killed somebody were charged with a crime. Here's some of the report's most interesting facts. Of the 534 killer cops that Mapping Police Violence was able to identify, 43 of those 534 cops had killed or shot someone before. 12 of the 534 had previously shot or killed multiple people. Most of the people killed, 718, were suspected of nonviolent offenses, like traffic violations. And some of them had committed no crime at all. 13% of all those killings by the cops, those people were unarmed. 13%. Most of the unarmed victims were people of color. Of the 147 people killed by police that were unarmed, 48 were black and 34 were Hispanic. You do the math. The rest of them were white. Hello? Wake up, everybody. Black people accounted for 27% of the people killed by law enforcement officers. Of the unarmed victims of police violence, blacks made up 37%, or 3 times their percentage of the U.S. population. Of the people who were unarmed and not attacking, but were still killed by cops, 35% were black. 95 people were killed when police shot at a moving vehicle, which most people think should stop, should ban that, because it could be a baby in there. Could be anything. 170 of the people killed were armed, but with a knife. 117 of those, police shot them before they tried any other method to disarm these people. 20% of the people who had a gun when they were killed, like Philando Castile, were not threatening anybody, like Alton Sterling. Alton Sterling never reached into his pocket. He never got a chance to do. He had a gun in his pocket when he was found dead, but he wasn't threatening anybody. Law enforcement training spends 7 times more hours training officers on the use of firearms than how to de-escalate a situation. Again, of all those numbers, only 12 officers were charged with a crime after killing 1,129 citizens that they were sworn to protect and serve. Now, here's the problem. There are bad apples on the police force. They just don't seem to ever get pulled out of the barrel, and they never seem to answer to the bar of justice. They never seem to get prosecuted in a way that would send a message. Like Mueller is sending a message to everybody in the Trump campaign. Lying to me is punishable by 5 years in prison. But these police get the opposite message. Kill somebody, plant a gun, kill somebody, say you were in fear of your life, you walk, don't worry. Even if that person wasn't making any mistakes. Now, I will give you that Stephon Clark made a mistake that night. But now it's time to talk about the mistakes that were made by the police, who apparently shot him 6 times directly in the back, and a 7th bullet went through the side of the back, which means he's laying down. You understand. And all that's ever left for these families is to bring wrongful death civil actions, because nobody wants to hold these police accountable. On behalf of the police who police us, I will say we are asking them to serve alongside some of the worst people on the planet. That's number one. And number two, we are asking them to police a society that is armed to the freaking teeth. And those things can't end well. That combination of crazy cannot end well. And this is why the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas kids are absolutely right to demand that we vote out the people who don't appreciate that civil rights belong to everybody, that you are innocent until proven guilty, that bad apples need to face the bar of justice, whether they're dealing with Russian intelligence officers and lying about it to the independent counsel, or they are shooting unarmed black men, or failing to de-escalate situations which could be de-escalated and not end up in the death of an unarmed person who was simply riding in their car with a broken taillight. Something is so wrong in our society, and it's like a perfect storm of crap. You don't spend the time training police officers to de-escalate. You don't spend the time to actually take these weapons out of the hands of 18, 20, 64-year-olds in Las Vegas hanging out of hotel windows. You know, you don't say that high-capacity magazines and weapons of war don't belong on the street, and that the NRA won't even make an argument that it's for the protection of law enforcement, which partly it is. Sure, it's for the protection of little kids. Sure, it's for the protection of innocent people who happen to live in, gang-infested neighborhoods. But it's also for the protection of the police. Why won't they admit that?
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
A fatal shooting of a young man in California behind his grandmother's house with a cell phone.
Certainly a terrible incident. This is something that is a local matter, and that's something that we feel should be left up to the local authorities at this point in time.
What do you feel about that? He was strongly behind police. He supports police, as much of America does, but wants to weed out bad policing. What does he say about weeding out bad policing when you continue to see these kinds of situations occur over and over again?
Certainly, we want to make sure that all law enforcement is carrying out the letter of the law. The president's very supportive of law enforcement. But at the same time, in these specific cases, in these specific instances, those would be left up to local authorities to make.
Over 1,000 people killed, and she says it's local, it's all local, and this is the way. Meanwhile,
yesterday, the president's press secretary said this is a local matter. No, this is not a local matter. They've been killing young black men all over the country, and we are here to say that we're going to stand with Stephon Clark and the leaders of his family. We are putting aside our differences. It's time for preachers to come out the pulpit. It's time for politicians to come out the office. It's time for us to go down and stop this madness.
Al Sharpton, obviously, the family needed help. They got Benjamin Crump. They have Al Sharpton now. And so you know what's going to happen here. This is going to be a civil case, right, for money damages. It will not hold police accountable in any meaningful way. It'll be a civil suit. They will win. They will recover some money. It will come from the city of Sacramento and whatever insurance policy the city of Sacramento will pay out the damages. But nobody, nothing will change. No laws will change. No procedure will change. Police will not be trained any differently. I mean, it's an endless loop of death in this country, an endless cycle. If we're not talking about police killing people of color, wrongfully because they're unarmed or because, a vigilante in the neighborhood thought Skittles was a gun, or you had Alton Sterling who had a gun in his pocket, or Philando Castile who had a bad taillight, and he told the police that he has a legal carry permit. Oh, well, we don't trust black men. And people just end up dead. No amount of money is going to bring these people back. No amount of money. And that's all that's left is a civil case. Really, that's all that's left. So an insurance carrier pays the damages. So a city pays the damages. This is ridiculous. It's endless. We either have mass shootings in schools or at concerts, or we have them in a movie theater, or we have innocent people walking down the street and being picked off. This is crazy. This country is so off the hook. And you got a president who stands there every single day and says we should treat them rougher. We shouldn't even cover their heads when we put them in a police car. I want you to treat them bad. I want you to treat them rough. You do anything you want out there. I gotcha. Oh, and when it happens, we just say it's local. Oh, when it happens, we just say they had it coming to them. Oh, when it happens, we ignore it. We just don't say anything until somebody like April Ryan asks a question. What about this boy who's in grandma's backyard with a cell phone? What about it? Oh, it's local. Unfortunate. Local. This is bullcrap. We can do better than this. On our own, we could do better than this. But it is time for people to start talking about it in white churches. The black church is going to talk about it this Sunday. This is freaking Good Friday and Easter Sunday, and for me, it's Passover. Oh, that reminds me. I got to make the matzah crack. Do we have? I have pecans. I need semi-sweet chocolate chips is what I need. You got it? Okay. No, but I mean, honestly, this is like a religious time for almost everyone in this country. And it's time for the white church, the white synagogues, come on out and say something about this. Just tell them, you're asking police to go out there in a society that's armed to the freaking teeth. You're asking resource officers with handguns to combat AR-15s in a school. You're asking police officers to go out there and police people that they don't, they assume everybody's outgunning them. You've got racism in the police force. You have people that are terrified of the young black male because of the crap the president says. Oh, it's a war zone out there. It's a war zone. And black Mexicans are rapists and they're drug dealers. I mean, the alt-right is the people, all of this stuff, and Fox News just ignoring things that, that their lily white audience has to know. They won't tell them. And a president who's under investigation for being a wholly owned subsidiary of a hostile nation. We probably have a Manchurian candidate in the Oval Office who's causing more societal damage than I've ever seen. Joe on Long Island.
Hi, Randy.
Hey, Joe.
Rand, I've been looking for you for a long time. We need you on the air. We need that truth that you bring out. I'm telling you, MSNBC should be hiring you. I want to say something about
They won't even
Trump.
book me.
I know. You are great.
I know.
What Trump did was brought racism out in this country.
Oh, has he ever?
Racism is alive and well and thriving in this country. I hear it every day from people where I work. All right? You look at Hitler and you look at Trump, they're identical. Their playbooks are identical. All right?
Yes,
and
it's called fear of the other.
Yes. Yes. Black people, Mexican people, white people were all the same.
Muslims.
Yes.
Yes, everybody.
And the NRA has stopped Congress and these politicians, these BALLL politicians, from even reporting that report that you just named about how many shootings there were out there. Mm-hmm.
I know. And all we have is a president who agitates, who coarsens the conversation, who shuts people down. He praises Nazis. He says some are very fine people. He and then he endorses a pedophile, Roy Moore. Let's not forget who this president is and what he endorses. I mean, he wants Rob Porter back in the White House, a guy who obviously had restraining orders that two wives had because he was violent. And this is who he wants back. I mean,
he's a wife beater. That's what Hillary was talking about, the deplorables, the Nazis that are for him, the KKK that's for him,
yes,
the white supremacists that are for him. They were all at his rallies.
I don't know why she called them deplorables and left it so open for interpretation instead of saying that he is supported by white nationalists, he is supported by white supremacists and racists, and the alt-right is just a euphemism for freaking Ku Klux Klan.
Absolutely.
So,
and the KGB was invited in the White House by Trump.
Well, what Russia has in common with the Trump supporters are they're white nationalists too. You're not.
Oh yeah.
In Russia, you're not allowed to be a practicing Jew. You're not allowed to be gay. You're not allowed to be anything. I mean, you I've been to Russia, and I'm telling you, people will not. If they talk politics, they literally cover their mouths.
Well, I saw once when one woman stood up to Putnam, and he actually went right over to her, gave her a nice little injection, and she went to sleep for the day. She wasn't allowed to speak out.
I never
against
saw
them.
that, but I can tell you that, you have a rock band, that simply,
Yes.
demonstrated against Putin, and they ended up in prison. You've got these people showing up dead all over the place. You've got a hit list now with, a guy I know, Bill Browder, who's been the most amazing whistleblower in the history of whistleblowers, especially, with regard to his lawyer, Magnitsky, being killed by Vladimir Putin. You've got, this British intelligence officer who defected from Russia. Him and his daughter they're trying to recover from a nerve agent that only Russia makes and has. I mean, and this president won't say a bad word about it. He just won't say a bad word.
He's a terrible. If it wasn't for the numbers changing by the Russians, he would never have been president. Hillary, this was Hillary's.
Well, obviously it wasn't. And, 3 million people, tried to put her over the top because she got 3 million more votes. But our ridiculous system, allowed him to target people, through this Cambridge Analytica psychographic profiling thing that, by the way, our new national security advisor, John Bolton, he just had a case filed against him because he illegally partnered his PAC, his super PAC, Bolton's super PAC, to North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis and others. And super PACs aren't allowed to coordinate with campaigns. They can spend money, endorsing who they want, but they can't talk to each other. And Bolton was giving Tom Tillis of North Carolina and probably a lot of other, Congress members and senators, all kinds of information from Cambridge Analytica and commingling money. And that is the one law that you can't do, that you can't violate. And he managed to do it. And now he's our national security advisor. Our previous national security advisor had to resign because he was a foreign agent. I mean, what kind of administration is this? Everyone's a freaking foreign agent. America first, my ass. Bob in Phoenix.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
If you take me off your speakerphone, it'll be really good.
Okay, hold on.
All right. One minute,
Hi, how
please.
are you?
How are you?
Oh, man, I am so impressed with your show, and I'm happy to be a supporter.
Oh, thank you.
You are so clear. The thing is that every time with the underlying theme about everything that you're talking about, is that we've become a nation of cowards.
Yes.
Laura Ingraham is a coward. The people who are that talk about the Second Amendment, they're cowards. They're afraid.
I know.
They're always, and this is the underlying problem in our whole entire country. When did we become so afraid?
Well, our president is a coward, too, because look what he does. He sets up a phone call between him and David Shulkin, our VA secretary. And on that phone call, I'm sure it was arranged so that he could give David Shulkin the bad news that he was going to be let go as our VA secretary. But instead of telling him on the phone, he tells him everything's fine. Everything's fine, and hangs up. And then fires him over Twitter. Same way he fired Rex Tillerson, over Twitter. These people are freaking awesome cowards.
Cowardly. It's a coward culture.
And I got news for you. The reason why all these people want these AR-15s, not only are they cowards, afraid of, the unknown and other people and whatever, but they're bad shots. They're horrible marksmen. And that's why they want the AR-15. The dirty little secret, they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. They're bad at they're bad at killing things.
As you look
at these police officers. What, they fired 18 shots? The kid's laying on the ground, 15 feet in front of them? Laying on the ground, splayed on the ground, not moving, and only 8 of their 20 bullets hit him? Cowards! It's sad, but, they're all bad marksmen. These people really...
Well, and the cowardice has ripples throughout the entire culture.
I know.
We find the cowardice where people are afraid of everything. Their economics being taken away, and their jobs are being taken away.
Yeah, you know what they're mostly afraid of? They're mostly afraid of the fact that in 2045 they are going to be what's known as the minority.
Yeah, they are.
And they're afraid because they don't trust that other people who aren't them don't want to hurt them because they know what they've done. They know what they've said. But we don't. Nobody wants to hurt. Jews don't want to hurt them, and African Americans don't want to hurt them, and brown people from Central America, who I know really, really well, don't want to hurt them. No one wants to hurt them. They just want them to talk to them as if they were human.
Well, that would be unusual for GOP.
Yeah, well, because the Guns Over People Party are so terrified of what they've said and what they've done, because they know what they've said and they know what they've done.
You know, there are 12 points of fascism, and we keep striking off a mark that says we're getting ever closer.
We were there when Bush was president, with the unitary executive, the militarization of the police, the uber nationalism, everybody's flying their flag. Donald Trump just took it to the next level, that's all. And now, he's saying exactly what Bush wishes he said, and that is, I alone. Just me. I don't need anybody. I don't need a cabinet. I don't need a defense secretary. I don't need a communications director so I can be clear with the American people. I don't need to lay out an agenda. I just need to be freed to be the unitary executive.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
When's the last time you spoke to him?
I spoke to the president yesterday.
What was that conversation like?
We spoke about the progress that I was making, what I needed to do from a policy perspective to make sure that we were fixing the issues in VA. Very focused. He was very inquisitive about the things that we were working on, making sure that we were focused on the job at hand.
Wait, that's before you were fired?
That's correct.
You spoke to him. He made no mention of the fact that he was about to terminate you?
That's correct.
And then you found out via tweet?
Right before that, the chief of staff, Kelly, gave me a call, which I appreciated, gave me a heads up. And so, but that was much after the phone call.
That is the height of cowardice, okay? And what Trump did, that was David Shulkin, our former VA secretary. And so President Trump obviously was on the phone with David Shulkin, and that phone call had to have been arranged so that Trump could give him the bad news that he was being let go and replaced by, a nice enough guy who's never run anything except, a MASH unit in Iraq, and that this new guy was now going to be in charge of 360,000 people and a $186 billion budget, and now he was going to have to run 170 hospitals and 1,000 clinics, right? So he called David Shulkin, arranged a phone call, and then decided he got cowardly. It's just like our callers are saying. He got scared, so he didn't do it. And then John Kelly calls David Shulkin and goes, oh, my God, that freaking lily-livered, yellow-bellied bastard didn't fire you. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. Check your Twitter feed. And sure as anything, this is how the president fired our VA secretary over Twitter. He did the same thing to Rex Tillerson. And then this week, Donald Trump actually told the press, well, I wish I would have fired Rex Tillerson over Twitter while he was overseas in Africa, because that would have maximized the humiliation. This is our president. This is a 6-year-old. This is a child. It's disgusting. And yes, he's a bully. And if we stood up to him, he'd back the hell down. He's so scared his whole life. He must wake up. This is probably why he jumps on Twitter all the time. It's probably why he's always on the defensive. He's just terrified all the time. And people that are frightened make really bad decisions. How many times have I said to you, never make a decision if you're angry, never make a decision when you're afraid. Because it won't be the right one. Charles in New York.
Hello, Randi.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
Listen, we're living in Babylon these days.
Yes.
I don't know if he was in New York during the Amadou Diallo case and the Sean Bell case.
I know them. I wasn't there then.
Okay. Well, I said from back then, if we were to start to, if the insurance companies that insure the police would stop insuring them, and the money would have to come out of these killer cops' pockets, this would change.
You know, you got a very good point because, but frankly, it's not the insurance companies that insure the police departments. They insure the city. And, you know, maybe I'll put together as much as I can find on who, is insuring Sacramento, the city. And we could start to, tweeting against them and tell them to drop the policies.
Do a David Hogg on them.
Yeah, a David Hogg, exactly. It seems to work.
You know, your research, the numbers that you put out, that you gave earlier, it was staggering.
Staggering, isn't it? 1,129 people killed by police in 2017, which is more than the total number of U.S. soldiers killed in action around the globe. That number is 21.
That's stunning. That's stunning.
Isn't it? If we don't understand that the war zone here, everybody was so afraid of terrorism because the enemy was so shadowy. Well, we don't know who the enemy is anymore, do we?
Well, we know some of the enemies, don't we?
Well, we know that there are bad people all over the place, and we also know that they're armed to the teeth, but certain segments never face the bar of justice. Certain segments get the death penalty for jaywalking or for breaking a window at 22, and others can kill you and never see justice.
Those numbers that you gave from the Roots, how do I look that up on the Roots?
It's on the Root, and the name of the article is "Here's How Many People Police Killed in 2017." If you put that "here's how many people police killed in 2017" into the Google machine, and then you put the Root, you'll get it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Randy.
You're welcome.
Love you, Matt.
I love you. I love you so much more. And I really do want you to start passing out this article. I really want people to see it.
Most definitely.
All right.
And when are you planning to do that research in regards to?
I will do it this weekend. I will try and figure out, who the insurance carriers are for the majority of U.S. cities. I will try and figure that out.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Charles. Have a good one. Happy Easter.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye. You too. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. It's Passover, but that's okay.
Hey, Randy, I'll go ahead and post that article right now on top of the homework page. Yeah, so it'll be right at the top. It'll be the first link on the homework in a few minutes.
The other thing that you could always do. Okay, so we this is off topic, but we launched our new website last week, and I did a soft, quiet launch because I wanted only a certain number of people, very early supporters who didn't like the old website so much, to look at the new website and give me the feedback on whether or not they found it easier. And we've put some features in there. So between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we have live help. Her name's Ashley. Hi, Ashley. She's a lovely girl, and she can help you figure out how to install your podcast, check your account, make sure your account is linked properly to your email, all these things, all these problems. I see them all. And so for the last 5 months, I've been building a new website with a new team of people that are awesome, I got to say. And Ashley is now sitting there right now at RandiRhodes.com. On the bottom, you'll see these 3 dots, and that's the chat. That's the live chat, and Ashley's on the other end of that. Now, I want to keep Ashley working, during normal business hours. I would like to pay her more. So, and get her to be there for you, at least during regular business hours. Right now, we only have her working 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, because that's what the budget will allow. So if you want to support the show, that's great. I mean, if you can, it's wonderful. A guy named the guy that I call Iron Man, he just donated 12 podcasts for me to give to people who don't have one. So I'll tell you, one of the things you can do now is sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of RandiRhodes.com. It's a double, you have to give double consent. You put your email in, then I'm going to send you an email asking if you really want this newsletter. If you do, we will send it to you. And things like the Root article could be included in that. And also, randomly, I can give away these 12 podcasts so nobody has, the phones are pumping right now. So if I gave them away right now, it wouldn't be fair because the people that are already on the line would take them, right? So, but sign up for the newsletter and we will tell you when we do these podcast giveaways and we will tell you how to get them. And we will, give you all if you want certain articles from the homework, we'll compile those and, we'll say. So there's an email that went out today to show you the new website, okay, to explain to you what it does. And also, the new website does something that I've always dreamed of doing for you, and it's finally done. And that is this. When you signed up for the podcast up until today, you only got an audio podcast. And a lot of you got spoiled watching this show live for free, and it'll still remain free when it's live. I will never change that. But a lot of people got used to seeing it, and they got used to watching it on YouTube or watching it on Facebook or on your phone on Periscope, whatever. And they were all saying, oh, I bought a podcast and I thought I was getting the video. Well, we couldn't afford to do that. And now we can, thanks to you and all the early support that you gave us. So as of today, actually as of last week, but as of today, if you are a Randi Rhodes podcast subscriber, your credentials that you already have will get you behind the paywall, as you know, for the audio, but it will also give you the video of every show, of all the shows. So they're there. And as long as you have a premium subscription, a podcast subscription, you will get the audio if you're driving and the video if you're not, and you want to watch. So we're going to grandfather in, meaning anybody who's already signed up, and we'll continue doing this till April 10th. Okay, if you sign up between now and April 10th, you will be grandfathered into both the audio and video podcast for the $7.95 a month or $72 a year, okay? But as of April 10th, we're going to raise our prices to pay for all these cool things and to pay the taxes this year, which are unbelievable, because we got no tax break. You? Anybody get a tax break? I didn't get a tax break. So we'll be raising the prices a little bit. And, not much, but a little bit. It'll still be under $10. I promise you that. And you will still get the audio and the video as of April 10th for the new price. But if you do it before April 10th, you'll get it for the old price. And there's live help on the site between 4 and 7 Eastern time right now. I talked to Ashley this morning, and I asked her if I needed more hours from you, do you have them to give me? And she said, yes. She loves doing it. So we'll hire her for, normal business hours if we can raise enough money. Meanwhile, we sent out an email, and I never do that. I don't clog up your box. I don't, get in your face. I don't ask you for this or that. It is the first of the month. I do ask you on the first of the month, to make as much donation as you can because we have to pay the bills. But there's an email in your box. If it's not in your box, check your spam folder and add us to your email list so that we don't end up there. And in the next, I guess, between now and around April 10th, we will keep you updated on all the different new things that are available for you at randirhodes.com. Now, it's important that you start using randirhodes.com because I know a lot of people use other things to watch and stuff, but it's important that you use randirhodes.com, and here's why. If Facebook is as bad as I think they've been with your data and things like that. I mean, they have to testify. We have to listen to steps they're going to take to protect your data. Google to, all these things. Then I need to pull the show off of those platforms to protect all of us. And I can't do it right now. Everybody said, there's a hashtag, delete Facebook, right, is a hashtag. Yeah, it's a lot easier to send a hashtag than to actually pull the trigger. I tried. I can't. I hover over the enter button and I can't make myself do it. I can't. Because so much of our business model was built on that being a decent platform for all of us to get to. But I would love to eventually move it. I really would. So, again, we sent you an email today. I don't do that so much, okay? And you know that. I think the last email we sent was when we had the Kickstarter campaign. And then I think about 4 months later, I tried to send you a homework email and you didn't want it. And so I can see that you didn't want it. Like if you don't open it or you delete it or what, I can tell. So we stopped sending you emails. But I did send you one today. And it's really important that you look at it and let me know anything that you want added to this website, because it's, it took us 5 months to build it this way, but it can be updated, it can be changed. Like if the three dots on the bottom, that bothers me because not everybody understands 3 dots is like a messenger thing. So I want them to change it and say, how can we help you today, or something more friendly like that. But it's all going to happen. And it's because you gave us your support early and often. Guys like Mr. Rust, who just donated 12 podcasts to, and he wants to donate them to millennials. That was his specific request. He wants them to go to people like between 18 and 30 because he thinks that they need to listen to this whole movement about ending gun violence in this country, whether it's gun violence by police against unarmed citizens or citizens of color, or people that are wielding knives and not guns, or cell phones and not anything, or broken taillights end up dead, or concealed carry people who happen to be black and brown. Well, that Second Amendment doesn't work for them. So he really wants millennials to be listening to this show. So that was Mr. I call him Iron Man because his last name is Rust. That's all I'll tell you. But Iron Man wants us to give away a dozen podcasts to millennials. All right, Ellen, I don't know where you are.
I'm in the blogosphere.
What does that mean?
I work for the blog News Hounds, and I'm a longtime fan, and I'm a subscriber, so I don't need a podcast. But
give me some ink.
Ink?
Yeah, in the blog.
Newshounds.us.
No, I don't want it. I want you to put me in there.
Well, I'll try, Randy. We write about Fox News, so I'll have to work you in that way.
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay.
As an alternative.
I will try. I'll look for a way. But I've been a fan of yours since I was temporarily living in Lake Worth back in, I think, 2002. And then I followed you to Air America and wherever the heck you were after that, and now here. But here's my question. I've been meaning to ask you this, but I don't always get to hear you live. What do you think has happened to Rudy Giuliani?
Ooh, I'm not done with him.
Why has he gone so silent? I find that very suspicious.
I do too. And you know what's really interesting about Rudy?
What?
Rudy's own lawyer at Bracewell Giuliani, a law firm so bad at what they did they don't exist anymore.
Is that Mukasey?
No. Well, yeah, it was. But Rudy Giuliani's lawyer, a guy named Larry Levy, is the person who wrote the letter to Cambridge Analytica, warning them, because they were representing Cambridge, that they had foreigners working on the Trump campaign and they better cut the crap because it was illegal, and at least get some people with green cards if they were going to do right.
So something is up.
Something is up, and Jeff Sessions refused to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate the FBI, who, by the way, were in the tank for Donald Trump.
Right. That New York office.
Of course.
Giuliani.
Right. And so while Fox News sits there and says that the FBI was in some conspiracy to elect Hillary Clinton, even though Comey reopened the Hillary email investigation 11 days before we voted, because of the New York Bureau, James Kallstrom, Rudy Giuliani being on the TV going, oh, the language they're using, I can't even tell you how pissed off they are, right?
Yeah, but
and
Randy,
that he had an October surprise coming, meaning he had advanced knowledge. Right.
And he used to be on Fox, like
every minute of every day. I know.
No, I haven't seen hide nor hair of him.
Because his hands are not clean in all of this. This is far from over. I'm telling you, Mueller just gave us some sort of a clue that there is indeed collusion. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.